Welcome back, everybody, to our final segment of this year's EV Summit. What an incredible 2 days of insights and engagements we've had so far. So thank you, everybody, for talking together with each other and collaborating. Before we dive into our next panel, we shall watch a short video from VIRTA. As EVs gain traction worldwide, the deployment of infrastructure has really become a critical focus across territories. So this next panel will really dive into the strategies and challenges that are involved in establishing charging networks, mainland mass applications, and innovative energy management strategies that are really aimed at reducing those consumer costs, which is so important. So without further ado, it's a pleasure to introduce our next set of speakers who will form the VIRTA panel. Joining us on stage are Stuart Tolley, Geo Director, VIRTA, Werner Bornman, Director of Technology, Jersey Electricity, Josh Spencer, Head of EV and Sustainability, Ford and SLATER, and Simon Cowling, Director of Operations and Interim Lead Director for EV at SSE. I'll be moderating again, but I would first like to hand over to Stuart to deliver our panel keynote.
Brilliant, thank you. Oh, pop up here. Slightly different opening video with a e-mobility theme, I guess. So the first scooter type event that we had in Finland. We are a Finnish organisation. My name is Stuart Tolley. I am the Geo Director for VIRTA here in the UK. Our business is actually based in Finland. From there we span out into 6 other territories and 37 countries, soon to be 38 countries. So we have an international scope that sits behind us. And we're here today really just to give an overview, hopefully within my time of 5 minutes. So I'll flick through some slides. Some of them may be controversial, some of them may not. Hopefully in this room everybody's still awake from this afternoon. You've all had your lunch, I hope. So looking at where we are today, there's kind of 4 major changes, and this is always from a European perspective. The UK rhetoric is very similar, but from the European perspective particularly, we're seeing a consolidation of the market. These will be the 4 points we'll run through, really. More energy-focused players, so thinking about who the traditional fuel providers have been in the past and where we are today. The importance of delivering success for investors in the UK market particularly, if we look at the private investment that's gone in behind all of the organisations that are operating in our particular marketplace, it's now becoming more and more important to deliver on the numbers. And in order to do that, we have to consider what the overall costs are and how do we improve that process. It's not about charging EV drivers more. It's about understanding your business metrics and ensuring that when you deliver in the right timescales. And then we'll look a bit at the evolution of energy management. There's been a few pieces really on energy management already. I think the overall understanding is that as we progress further forwards, we need to deliver an opportunity to provide the drivers with what they're expecting at the time they're expecting it without impacting on our national provision. So it's an important process. Okay, from the consolidation of the market perspective, apologies, but I will read a few notes. The market is definitely in a period of consolidation. We're seeing that already. It's mainly as a result of the increase in cost of investment, the cost of borrowing. People that took out money some time ago are obviously now finding the pinch. And we're finding that companies are being divested, interestingly, from some of the major portfolios. So we've seen movement in the market. In the European market particularly, this has been quite significant. Large players removing themselves from their position in market, accepting that they're not successful in, say, CPO service provision, and they're moving towards EMP and EMSP services. Lower OPEX costs, obviously, then are a direct result of that. In the UK market, if we look more closely, the lack of inward governmental investment, that does need to change. The levy fund has been talked about a lot. That will ultimately go out to many, many companies. Will it be enough to support each one of those individual companies? That's yet to be seen. I think if we are now in the position of governmental change, we should be pushing for more investment. We need to understand that the market has to deliver, but also private investment and the cost of investment is not necessarily sustainable. So as the market supply chain kind of restricts, it gets smaller, it's more and more important now to deliver the premium level of service that EV drivers are expecting. In order to do that, we have to deliver on promises that were made 5 years ago that we're generally still speaking about today. We need to find a way of delivering the original statements that we provided that this will be the future of mobility. In order to do that, we have to make sure that from a financial position the companies can succeed, but also that the end result is the EV drivers are provided with a service that is exceptional. Energy players in the market are changing, okay? So wet fuel providers and operators, there has been a lack of trust, I think, and that feeling appears not only in the UK market, but significantly in the European market. We're seeing more and more companies pull back from the wet fuel provision, not providing EV services in the way that they should be, an expectation that their customership will just go from pumping wet fuel into a vehicle to a dry fuel solution, moving with e-mobility. The reality behind that is that there is a lack of trust. Connecting the dots between on travel, moving around the country and being able to charge at home has given the energy companies the best opportunity ever to deliver premium service with one point of billing. The ability to go backwards and think, why do we need to provide payment terminals at certain locations? We don't always have to do that. A majority of people still charge at home. Okay, there's the offset of that not everybody has a driveway, of course. But the reality is if we can keep payment systems in one place, so you have one bill to the customer, the EV driver experience will be exceptional. It's the first time that that's happened. There is this new landscape, and energy companies have this unique opportunity to stand alone in a market. CPOs, exactly the same situation. You have a provision that you provide to your drivers, and those provisions are very, very good today. They will get better over time. There was a discussion around how do we improve uptime for chargers, how do we achieve the numbers that are being requested. If you have sensible provision in market, if you have the right products in market and you have the right support in market, we can improve the service further. Success versus investment is interesting. High OPEX costs really are the thing that cost business. Delivering the requirement within market with a high headcount is a very difficult situation to find yourself in. Over time, it gets worse. The more you add infrastructure into the market, the more support services you need. Performance can lack, or you employ more people to improve performance. The loss margin is only going to get bigger at that point. So people that are looking for the return on their investment, they have to consider what things can be done to make a change. If we look at the things and the areas that most companies need to improvement, it's direct costs, fixed costs, including investment, including development, their capital expenditure, and the cost of network expansion. Particularly the cost of network expansion is one that really does have to be focused on. And the OPEX costs that sit behind that are not only the infrastructure that we put in, but also the process that sits behind it. The OPEX costs, the day-to-day running of those businesses. Many businesses have obviously been set up then to deliver a prime service, only to find themselves managing the multiple layers of that business in a disjointed way. So you bring in a lot of people, you try and get those departments to talk to each other. There are services that can be outsourced that will provide a better opportunity for that. With regards to energy management, today versus the future, there are lots of opportunities to manage energy in a really, really solid way. From an ALM, DLM perspective, frequency containment reserves, V2X development and where we are today to where we need to be in the future. I won't deep dive into any of those, but the opportunity is there for us to manage energy. If we manage the energy in a smart way, everything else falls into place. Smart grids have a reliance on e-mobility, and we need to make sure that whatever we do works in the right way to support the grid, but also to support the drivers without impacting on driver time. VIRTA set its goals in 2013. For people that don't know, we're in our 10th year, operating across the multiple countries and regions that we do. And we had the mission statement at the very outset of this, before e-mobility became what e-mobility is today. Sustainable energy and mobility made possible by connected electric vehicles and charging infrastructure. The connections, a bit like in this room, when the connections happen, everything works the right way. It's an absolute honour for me to work for VIRTA. I've been here 5 years now. We make things happen in practice. So VIRTA isn't just making a statement. We don't just talk about disruption. We actually make these things happen with visible benefits to our customership. So thank you very much for your time. I will now sit back down.
Thanks so much, Stuart. That's really, really great insight, and I think it's so important, isn't it, just to both simplify the process for consumers and help reduce those costs wherever possible. So thanks to everybody for joining us today. Let's make a start. So Werner, first question to you, and the polite way of phrasing this is legacy infrastructure is not always fit for purpose, but actually sometimes do we just need to rip it out and start again? So how do you envision creating a new blueprint for EV infrastructure that not only accommodates current needs, but is also really adaptable to future technology and market demands?
Thank you very much. Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for the invite. This is my first EV Summit. It's a really great event. Thank you very much. So I'm not in the EV space, first of all. I'm the Director of Technology with the responsibilities of EV. So let me just acknowledge that. I want to set up just a little bit of a context. All of the challenges that everybody's been talking about in terms of CPO regulation and so forth, we don't have that. So when you talk about a defined opportunity or defined territory, we've got every single citizen within Jersey as our customer. So we've got that natural break between whether they're public charging, home charging, fleet, they are our customer. We're 100% smart meters, we're fully digital, we're virtually decarbonized. So all of the objectives that everybody's trying to achieve, we can go tick, tick, tick. Now what? What do we do? And that's I think, in your space, it could actually be quite a scary space, because once you get over your hurdles, where do you see the opportunities lie? And when we looked at our infrastructure, which we invested a couple of years ago, we realized that is not fit for purpose. So to your question, we ripped it all out. And we removed all the top ends, and we re-implemented a whole new infrastructure from the public charging network point of view. And that all started because the back-end software was not capable of delivering our objectives. And what we were looking for was to traverse all of those verticals. We weren't just looking for public, we were looking for something that can do everything for us. And we needed to take a pure technology approach to it. Not here's hardware, here's software, how do we make it work, and build a proposition. We worked back and said, well, what do the island need? And of course, going from a utility side, we needed to make sure that it protects the grid. And that's one of the primary reasons why we put it in. And this is a vehicle for us to look into that. So vehicle to grid, it's not there yet, but we're designing for it. Being able to do fleet at home, how do we do that? So we don't have the solutions yet, but we've done that by design. I think we also needed to look at trust, because that's what people were complaining about. So we built, first of all, we looked at trust. It needed to be reliable. Because as we were ripping everything out, people still needed to charge. How do you do that? You can't say, oh, there's not a charging facility, let's go down the road. It didn't exist. We own it, we need to fix that. But from a technology point of view, what was a non-negotiable for us, we followed composability, which meant that it needed to be able to pull out some components and put other components in. Hardware, software, people, process, contracting, doesn't matter. It needed to be composable. Interoperable. we couldn't have things working against each other. That was absolutely fundamental. And then standardization, all the way from standards to processes and the way we engage with our citizens. Because we don't just call them customers, they are citizens, and they all have a relationship with us. So those are the key components that we looked at, but I can talk for hours about this.
Werner, thanks so much, because I'm really looking forward to a future, and insert number of years, sort of EV summit, where we're sitting here on a panel like this and thinking, well, actually, we've done it all, so what should we do next? So, you know, and won't that be a great place for everybody to be? But Stuart, over to you. So we've heard from Werner that managing grid enablement, and we've heard from you as well, actually, load dynamics is really important to ensure that EV operations don't negatively impact drivers or businesses. But what are the really important things to think about in that whole piece?
I think if you go all the way back to grid stability, that's the kind of starting point, to make sure that whatever we do next, we don't have an impact on our current service, and as we improve the service, it should get better. For me, in as many years as I've been sat in e-mobility, the biggest priority has been the customer. And an aligned service, so as Werner already says, it's all about the driver. So if we are going to impact on the ability for someone to charge, we need to make sure it's done in a way where they understand it. We shouldn't load limit on sites where people are expecting a high capacity charger to operate as a high capacity charger. And okay, the admission that it could be the vehicle that's limiting it, but quite often it's the load that's available that's going to limit it. So as people understanding grows, you don't go to a refueling location today and expect only 10 pence worth of petrol to come out, right? You expect to be able to fill your car. It's exactly the same process. So we have to build an ability to manage load effectively without impacting the EV driver. It's a challenge, but it's something that we're working very closely with our customers to do.
Yeah, I can imagine it's a challenge, because I think as an EV driver, I've got enough to think about understanding my charging curve when I use a public charger, my maximum rapid charge rate, and all that other stuff, and then to think about, actually, why aren't I getting what I thought I was going to get when I plug in to top up? So it's complex, isn't it?
Very much an education piece.
Yeah.
For me. If you put 350 kilowatt sticker on a charger and it delivers 50,
yes.
big question.
Yeah,
and we have to educate people to understand the reasons why these things happen, or we do something differently outside of education to make sure they understand the process.
Yeah, and it comes down to communication, doesn't it? You know, even just that up to 50 kilowatt or up to 150 kilowatt on those public charges should go a big way to make a big difference. Thank you, Stuart. Simon, how can we ensure that charging hubs are optimally located such that grid capacity actually is not an issue as far as is possible? And how do we balance design of those hub, charger choice and accessibility requirements effectively?
So I think the combination of all those factors is the challenge. Strategic locating our hubs, making sure that when we're looking at them, we're looking at everything that sits around that, from a heat map around power supply, what can we get locally, can we get it all at once? So there's again the rationale about what do we need to build now, what can we give ourselves future capability for, as much as making sure that they're in the right location for vehicle movements, number of people who are going to be able to use them, and then once you've, I suppose, got through those first couple of hurdles, it's about making sure that they are accessible, that to a lot of the points that have been raised already, that we are able to provide what we're, I suppose, rating on the charger, that we're able to do that and get people moving as fast as possible from those points, be it your EV drivers, but also fleet customers as well, making sure that there's the ability to do that and keep that sort of consistent and as well as safe. And I think that's one of the key points as well when you are looking at the design of the hub. What does that look like? What local amenities might there be to try and keep that onward journey as swift as possible?
Yeah, and I suppose partnerships comes into that as well, doesn't it, with retail operations and so on and so forth, really to optimise that consumer experience as well, wherever possible. Yeah, brilliant, thank you. Josh, so thinking about fleet operations, what are the specific power requirements and load management strategies that are necessary for effectively integrating EVs into fleet? operations, and thinking about depots, how can these strategies be optimised within depots?
Thanks, Jill. Great questions. Firstly, thank you to Aid and the team at GreenTV for the opportunity to be here and share what we're doing in the truck space. What I'd like to inject is an element of positivity, because there's a huge amount of positive actions and conversations come out of the last couple of days with charger providers, CPOs, charger manufacturers, and also I think we are going to see a next sort of stage of partnerships develop within this industry in the UK, and I'm super excited to be at the forefront of that. I work for Ford and SLATER DAF. We are the largest privately owned DAF dealer group in the UK, and we have a mission to be at the forefront of EV provision for heavy trucks in the UK. Great product range behind us in DAF trucks, lithium ferrophosphate battery powered, and to take on the point about the charging, that kind of frames that well, because we have two quite separate and distinct sort of asset classes. So we deal in rigid vehicles, which we have a hugely grateful for market share within that, but a big market share in 4x2 rigid. And we want to provide partnerships and assets for our customers at that range, because at those speeds, we're talking 150 kilowatt max in most cases. And the last thing we want to do is, to put it crudely, clog up 350 kilowatt and above assets with those slower charging vehicles, because that has two effects. It stops the faster charging vehicles, the faster charging capable vehicles from using those assets, and it also prevents maximum revenue generation for the CPOs operating the larger assets. So critical for us is partnerships between, we play a very small part in that. We're putting 180 kilowatt DC infrastructure into our sites because we want to support customers when they bring trucks in for 6 weekly service. But at the same time, we're then there to be a shop window to other partners. So be that truck dedicated asset CPOs, whether that be bus companies who hugely grateful to the work we're doing with those partners. So actually from a load management perspective, we then say to ourselves, well, we always have to take a view that at some point during the day, somebody is going to need to come in on a 45-minute break. And at that point, we want to be able to try and deliver maximum power to them through that given charger, at whatever asset class that be. So we've taken a view that we've got dedicated connections and meter boxes and assets for our chargers, because we want to deliver that maximum capacity at any one time. But at the same time, with bigger build-outs with customers, they may only require a proportion of those assets to be that maximum speed. They may have a proportion which they use at, say, 50 or 90 kilowatt for overnight charging or between shift charging. And it's for us to help them appreciate, what works best in the right fit. And there's a lot of exciting work within ZHID going on to sort of do that and show the rest of the industry and the people in the room as well what that looks like, really.
Yeah, thanks, Josh. I sat in my first ever electric truck the other day, which was so exciting, and I was just blown away because the range is 400 kilometres, which is about 250 miles, and as you say, that 40-minute stop that they have to take is when you top up, and then you get on your way. And clearly, it's an awful lot more complex than that to actually get it all up and running. But it's amazing. It just goes to show that battery electric will work for that kind of vehicle.
Not to oversimplify it, but trucks are limited to 56 miles an hour. They can drive for 4.5 hours before a driver has to take a regulated stop. So the nature of the UK strategic road network and the road network in general is that trucks don't generally do more than 200 miles in a 4.5 hour period. So even at that very top end, if they can add 150 miles of range in an hour, then actually there's very little operational disruption. We as an industry just then have to collectively make sure that assets are in the right place for them to do that.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, Josh. Werner, I think it's probably fair to say that nothing in the EV market is a carbon copy from one space to another. Can you share an example where innovative approaches in rolling out infrastructure has really succeeded sort of by thinking beyond those more traditional constraints?
Hopefully I won't offend anybody in the room, but whenever we start talking with anybody to help us with solutions, they tend to bring out a normal slide deck and they go, we can do this, but those are not our problems. And you can see they just, all the blood drains from their face and go, now we've got nothing in our tool set to present to you. So what do we do? And that's where we want people to be a little bit more innovative in the way that they think about the solutions. And I think we can learn quite a lot from the telco space. I think that EVs are at the brink of being as disruptive as the telcos were in the early 2000s. But it is about how do we package these things in a right way that is super, super simple. Initially it was, oh, you've got interconnect charges and you've got all of these different components that you need to think very similar to up to, and your data you can't roam here. But now it's quite simple. Pay an extra £6, you can roam. It's about the simplification of the propositions and how it gets presented to individuals. But I don't think we're there yet. Our propositions teams have really focused on one specific home proposition that they've taken to the market about 18 months ago, and that is a fixed fee subscription model. We'll come and do the installation, you don't worry about anything, you plug in, that's it. Starts off at £30, and then if you go up to a taxi driver, that's £80 for the month, that's it. You don't worry about anything else. We assume the risk, and they don't worry about it. And that has really, really taken up by a lot of individuals. And we thought that the home market is going to be the main market that will be excited about it, but it's the taxi drivers. They are starting to become our advocates, and that's quite nice to see them talking. They create coffee clubs and they have chats around the propositions. So it's really nice to see something as simple and presented in a simple way is what I think where the real key is going to be for us in the future.
Thanks, Werner. Yeah, I love it when I go to London and get in an electric taxi and have a chat with the driver. I love getting their insight. So, yeah. They probably are not so keen, but Stuart, so this is the last question because I would love to spend some time for Q&A with the audience. So, with energy companies taking the forefront in powering the EV transition, how can energy companies really differentiate services and reduce costs while still maintaining that high level of service and satisfaction for drivers?
It's a brilliant question, and one I think you can answer probably several different ways. In terms of differentiation, we've all grown up with the wet fuel industry, right? I can remember the first time I filled up a car. I can remember the last time I filled up a car. I've never been back to a petrol station. I've no reason to go there. The change will come when people understand that what they've learned, what is basically muscle memory, will start to change. So the differentiator is how people are taken on that journey and who they remember taking them on that journey. And again, to kind of backwardly reference, the first time I filled up a car was with my dad. The first time most people then engage with the vehicle at that age now are going to be seeing something plugged in. And what's the experience like? And why does it come from that provider? So there is this radical change that will happen. We'll move away from what we've seen as tradition as we fall away from the market and the younger generations take over the market. I think now is the time to be able to deliver something of opportunity and difference. And whether that be, Jersey is a very, very unique environment, right? And Werner has done an incredible job from a technology basis to ensure that the drivers get the best experience possible and linking it backwardly to a customer journey with Jersey Electricity. So the incumbent is there. They understand the process, they understand the product. And for the first time ever, people don't go to petrol stations. Now everything is in one environment. Now is the chance for energy companies, particularly who own a massive amount of infrastructure and opportunity and customership, to deliver a product that allows people to move around freely.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, Stuart. So we do have a few moments left for questions. So a roving mic will come round. Please put your hand up. There's a gentleman over there. Please say your name and which organisation you work for.
Hello.
And keep it nice and concise, please.
Hi there, Ed Stone from Bain & Company. Lots of conversation about effectively flexibility and the value that can come from that. I was really curious to get, frankly, the entire panel's views on two things. One, there's different types of flex. There's smart charging, there's vehicle to home, there's vehicle to grid. I was curious to get your views on how much value do you think is associated in each of those areas. Second of all, there's huge competition for that value. The OEMs want it, the energy companies want it, the CPOs want it. Who do you think is going to capture that value and why?
Can I just take the point from the trucks? Because I think that from a value perspective, it's something that there's a lot of energy at stake here, right? We talked about emissions, and there are over 30 million cars on the roads in the UK, only 450,000 trucks, but those 450,000 trucks contribute over 20% of vehicle emissions. So it's easy to work out how much energy is needed to move those vehicles. And so a lot of the partners that I'm working with are very quickly realizing that the businesses we work with just will not make this transition at 70 or 80 pence a kilowatt hour. What they want to be able to do is come to partners who are prepared to be commercial, and then they will bring the volume of electricity to make it profitable for them. To take the point on the actual value of it, we have to go to market with a value proposition which looks nothing like what people have been used to. They have to have supported leasing for battery health and battery reassurance. They have to have non-balance sheet asset management. Otherwise, and we might all have our views about huge businesses who make big profits, but ultimately they're still not going to make the decision unless we help make it for them and take them a value proposition which is inexorable.
Thanks, Josh. Simon, I don't know, do you want to come in on that? Smart charging, vehicle to grid, vehicle to home?
I think certainly for our proposition, what we're talking about is making sure that we've got the flexibility when the connections don't necessarily stack up against what you would be expecting at peak. So how do we balance that? Different times, give ourselves the opportunity to be, I suppose, much more flexible, and when we do deliver that power, given that actually, as we've said, that a lot of it about is making sure that it is the least impactful part of your journey to an extent, so that actually it's readily available when it's needed, and then we are able to get people on the move once they've used amenities, etc. So not only siting them in the right locations, but giving that flexibility of being able to move on at pace.
Thank you, thank you. So one super quick question with a super quick answer, if we may, if there is one final question. Oh, should we go to Melanie? Thanks, Davina.
Thank you, Melanie from ZapMap. This is a question for Werner. It's brilliant that you've got an environment which sounds like you've solved most of the problems that we've got, across the whole UK. And we know that the EV uptake in the UK is broadly flatlining, slightly growing at around 17% of new vehicles. So what is the uptake? What's the consumer demand like in Jersey? Have you, what's the percentage there?
I'd like to say more than the UK, but we're actually half of what the UK is. What is interesting when you look at the stats, we've got more vehicles in Jersey than people. Our maximum tariff is 21p. And there's no range anxiety. So whenever somebody talks about the challenges that you have, I'm going, okay, well, why are we struggling? We're trying to unpack that, and I think that's part of one of the key principles why we put in a better platform, is to get to the data. And we're starting to see it's the behaviors of the individuals that are giving us more insight in how they want to work. I think we tend to forget the lifestyle that people are buying. They're not buying a car, they're not buying freedom, they're buying a lifestyle. And I think that's particularly when I drive in Europe, because we're very close to France, and I see what's happening in the UK. I think there's too many parallels with fuel stations, and we're trying to mimic that in a new way. But maybe we should just look completely differently and say, well, what is the EV experience? It's completely different. How do we do that? So we've not been able to crack that yet, but it is, I think the challenge that we have is we can't take solutions from other areas and just put it into Jersey. That is a challenge that we have. But I will be back when I get that, when I can solve that and sell it, trust me.
Thank you, that was a great question, and I'm afraid that a fantastic answer. Thank you, Werner. So I'm sorry that is all that we've got time for this afternoon. So a big thank you to all of our panellists for this brilliant session, and to you, our EV Summit audience, of course, for such great participation. I'd like to invite our panellists to now rejoin the audience. Thank you so much. Thank you.